I want to thank you all for tuning in to Black Video News. I'm your host, Keith Scott. It is a special, unique day right here in San Antonio. I don't know if you've been to the movie theaters yet, but Spike Lee's production is out, BlackkKlansman. But this story had to come from somewhere. And yes, we're here at the Alamo Draft right here in San Antonio, and we're here with Retired Detective who wrote the book, and I've got both of the books right here in front of me. Retired Detective Ron Stallworth.
How you doing?
How are you doing?
Right now, I'm doing real good. We're selling books. We made #1 on the New York Times bestseller paperback list as of 3 days ago.
Well, you know, I've got to say, sir, thank you for taking the time out to talk to us here at BVN. And it's such an honor to talk to you today.
My pleasure.
Let's go right into it, Mr. Stallworth. You know, from Chicago, raised in El Paso. On a summer day in '72, your folks, you moved to Colorado Springs. Kind of knew as a young guy, you know, what the path was going to be in law enforcement. It was an interest to you. Tell us a little bit about, you know, '72 going into, you know, maybe, or a little further, being a cadet, knowing that you wanted to be a, you know, undercover detective.
Well, it didn't quite happen that way. I joined the police department in 1972 as a cadet in order to make enough money to put myself through college and become a high school PE teacher. But after a year of being on the job, A, I was having too much fun. B, I was making twice as much money as a college graduate in the teaching profession. So I decided to stick it out and make law enforcement my career, and I ended up doing that for the next 32 years.
Yeah, and you broke some barriers, too, when we talk about, you know, being in Colorado Springs and going right into, you know, a little bit in your career going into the intelligence department. Now, let's just touch on that real briefly, because weren't you the first African-American in that department for intelligence?
I was the first black detective in the history of the Colorado Springs Police Department and the youngest at the age of 22 years and 2 months in the detective division. And that was 1975 when that occurred.
1975. How old were you then?
Well, I was 22 when I went into the detective division. I was 25 when this BlackkKlansman case took place.
Yeah, so 25, get this case, an investigation, decide that you see a number that you're going to make a phone call and just reach out to the Ku Klux Klan, KKK. Tell us a little bit about, you know, that day when you decided to make that call.
Well, I was sitting in my office reading the newspaper. Every day we scanned the 4 newspapers that floated throughout the city, circulated throughout the city. We scanned them to find out what news was pertinent to the interest of our city, what might be a threat, etc. And on this particular day, I saw an ad in the classifieds. It said Ku Klux Klan for information, and there was a P.O. box. So I sat down and wrote a note to the P.O. box identifying myself as a white supremacist. I used all the buzzwords that they like to use, the language of hate, as I call it, the derogatory references to us as people of color. I referred to Mexicans, blacks, Jews, Asians, all the derogatory terms, and told them that I wanted to stop the abuse of the white race. And then I did something I shouldn't have done. I wrote my real name, signed my real name to it, mailed it off, and forgot about it.
Wow.
And it was about a week or two later, the phone rang. I also put the phone number, the unlisted phone number that we use for undercover assignments in there. About 2 weeks later, I get a phone call, and the caller asks to speak to Ron Stallworth. Okay, I'm freaking out. Who's calling me by my name on this phone line?
Right.
And he identified himself as the local organizer of the new Colorado Springs chapter of the KKK. Said he got my letter and wanted to know why I wanted to join the Klan. So I repeated what I wrote in the note, and then I spiced it up a little bit. I said my sister was recently dating a so-called N-word person. That's a term, by the way, I don't like, N-word. Nobody in this country ever called any of us N-word. They called us niggas, but they didn't call us the N-word. Think about it. So he said, my sister's dating a so-called N-word person, and I told him that I wanted to, every time I thought about him putting his filthy black hands on her pure white body, it made me cringe. And I said I wanted to do something to stop this abuse of the white race. He said, you're just the kind of guy we're looking for. And that started my investigation.
Started by investigation. Here we are now as the investigation, and let's just kind of take a ride with the investigation. As the investigation progresses and you become a member, and you said in an interview that you couldn't go out, of course. So tell us a little bit, how you decided, or who was the guy, the detective that actually played you when you went out trying to, have a relationship with the Klan.
Well, for obvious reasons, I couldn't go to any Klan meeting. So I had to formulate a plan for pulling this investigation off. My plan was very simply to do the talking on the phone. It was my case. It was an intelligence case. Do the talking on the phone to guide everything, steer everything, orchestrate everything. And when it required a face-to-face meeting, I got a white detective that I knew. I call him Chuck in the book. In the movie, he's referred to as Flip Zimmerman. But I got a white detective and told him the plan, told him that I need your face present for physical or face-to-face contacts, and sent him in representing me. I gave him any identification I had for the first meeting that did not have my photo, credit card, library card, social security card, that type thing. And just in case they wanted to verify that he was Ron Stallworth, and sent him into the first meeting with this guy, the local organizer. And we pulled this con off, if you will, for the next 7.5 months. They never realized they were talking to two different people.
Now, during this 7 months, were you and, of course, the rest of the police department or the people that were assigned on this case to help you, were you all able to stop any illegal activities that took place with the organization?
We directly prevented 2 cross burnings. I know because I was invited to participate in them, and I would get the location, the time, the date, and then beg out of going because something would come up. And then I would contact my dispatcher, and we would send police units, uniformed police units, to the location in question to patrol the area. An area that normally had maybe 1 patrol car suddenly found itself with 3 or 4. And we would just saturate the area for a period of time until they backed off. And that prevented 2 cross burnings directly. They planned a 3rd one, and as they talked about the 3rd one, they got reminded of what happened the previous 2 times and decided not to do it. So technically 3 cross burnings. We learned of a plan to coordinate with another far-right extremist group called the Posse Comitatus.
Okay.
The Posse Comitatus in the 80s and 90s evolved into the survival groups that you hear about, the militias.
Right.
The Posse Comitatus shares the same ideology as the Klan, and they wanted to link with the Klan members, and one of the Klan members, who were primarily Fort Carson Army personnel, to steal automatic weapons from Fort Carson. They never did, but they plotted it, they planned it. We learned of 2 people who were assigned to NORAD, the North American Air Defense Command, in Colorado Springs. We identified 2 top secret personnel who were monitoring North American airspace as part of their day-to-day job.
Right.
And once we identified these people, the deputy commander who I met with of NORAD made a phone call to the Pentagon, and some general, I don't know who, gave him orders to have those men relieved of their assignment effective by the end of business that day. and that happened.
What do you believe? What do you believe was their biggest fear, from just from the perspective of investigating and have this investigation go with that chapter in Colorado Springs?
Whose biggest fear?
The Klan, the organization in Colorado Springs.
They had no fear. They were just trying to organize and do the things that Klan members do, and that's burn crosses, preach hate, preach white pride, preach immigration control. Basically the same thing that Donald Trump ran for president on and got elected because of 63 million foolish, ignorant voters and those Obama voters who abandoned the Obama coalition. Okay, that's what happened. That's what they believe in.
Do you feel that, during the investigation and even, coming to the end of the investigation, that it had an impact in that city?
Did my investigation have an impact?
Yes, sir.
Well, as I said, we stopped 3 cross burnings. We identified top secret personnel at NORAD who were removed. We learned of links to steal automatic weapons from Fort Carson. We had a major impact. Main thing we had an impact on was we identified the coalition of far-right extremist white supremacist groups in the state of Colorado. They were all trying to link up at that time. They met our people they had a meeting in Colorado Springs and met with them, the American Nazi Party, Posse Comitatus, the Ku Klux Klan chapter in Denver, the Grand Dragon for the state of Alabama attended this meeting. They all came together, and basically they were trying to get everybody to get more involved in promoting the white supremacist doctrine and further engage in that type of activity.
Yeah, Mr. Stallworth, you decided that you wanted to tell your story, your written story. Did you have any idea, telling a written story, that you would be on the big screen and have Spike Lee directing a movie?
No. I just decided after all these years, around 2013, I decided to finally put pen to paper and tell a story that I thought was unique, a story I thought should be told. And I started in March of 2013. I wrote the first 30 pages, didn't like them, tore them up, and then started again. And from that point, it just flowed. For the next 9 months, I worked on this manuscript. My wife was the first one to read the manuscript, and after 9 months, I decided that's enough. I basically have the story down, and I'm satisfied with it, and turned it over to a small publishing company. Interestingly enough, your readers might find this interesting. I sought out black publishing companies to publish my manuscript and got ignored by everybody.
Wow.
It took 2 white police officers retired from Santa Ana Police Department who had a small publishing company to agree to publish this. That's how it got out. That's how people became aware of it. And this past October, the rights were given to me from the original publisher, and Flatiron Books out of McMillan, Flatiron Books decided they wanted to republish it, re-edit it and republish it, and this is the re-edited version that made the #1 New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah, New York #1 bestsellers list. How are you feeling about the finished product on screen?
Spike did a masterful job with my story. He captured the essence of everything I went through. He did add a little flair here or there that's not in the book for dramatic purposes, which I was aware of. Hollywood will do that to your story. But he basically told my story. About 90% of what's in the book is in the movie, and the rest is Hollywood creation. And it all comes together just fine. It's a wonderful story, and I'm very proud of it, and I'm very pleased with what he did with it.
Well, Mr. Stallworth, I want to thank you. It's truly an honor. For my viewers, if you haven't seen the movie is out, BlackkKlansman. It's here. He's here in San Antonio, Texas. And Mr. Stallworth, I want to thank you for taking the time out to share your story with us here on BVN. And we wish you all the success with the book and the movie, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, this is Keith Scott. We're here at the Alamo Draft House right here in San Antonio, Texas with retired detective Ron Stallworth. The movie's in theaters now. We'll see you next time right here on Black Video News. As always, be encouraged.